Hello everybody, Ben Coley here, and we're going to part two of our two-segment story on Fukushima and the terrible tragedy, nuclear disaster, nuclear meltdown at the facility there in Fukushima, Japan. And oh my God, I mean, this thing is just so horrible. Just even talking about it is quite frightening. And I've been following this thing ever since the beginning. And as a potential future leader of this country, I want to make sure that you understand that one of my top priorities is going to be making sure that you're safe and that in fact the world is safe. And right now our politicians are talking about who is going to control the earth and who is going to control this country or that country. I'm telling you right now, we are facing an extinction event here with this Fukushima, and I think that we need to find out what caused the earthquake. 2, we need to investigate to make sure it wasn't man-made. Number 3, we need to find out some way of stopping it from leaking so that it will not pollute the entire Pacific, which it already has done, as proven by the fact that any moron can take a Geiger counter down to the beach in California and measure the background radiation. And to try to tell me that that radiation, that cesium, did not come from Fukushima is ridiculous. You're not going to be able to convince any scientist with a straight face that that radiation isn't making it over here to the United States. And either way, even if it weren't coming to the United States, it's going into the ocean and it's killing the sea life. That's why we're having mass die-offs. And in fact, it's going to kill all the plankton in the ocean. And this plankton, these small living animals, are what produce our oxygen. More oxygen is produced in the ocean by this microscopic life than all the trees on the earth. So you better keep that in mind. As this radiation circulates throughout the Pacific Ocean, not only is it going to ruin your ability to eat fish, unless you're insane and you want to eat radioactive fish and get cancer and surely die, maybe not right away, but a slow death or sometime in the future, or if you're lucky, you'll be one of the lucky few that eats tuna fish without getting sick. But I'm going to do something about it. I promise you, I have put my right hand up and I promise you, if I get into a leadership position, I will devote at least $1 billion of U.S. money, even if we have to do a QE or borrow the money from the Fed. It doesn't matter, and we're gonna have our friendly countries, our friends around the world, those who are still our friends, also pony up $1 billion or the equivalent of $1 billion each, and we are going to follow a plan that I have drawn up. I've actually taken the time to draw up a plan to try to stop this thing. Now, I know that the Japanese are trying to save their nuclear power plant. They would like to bring this thing back online so they can generate electricity again. I'm saying I don't think that's going to happen. Certainly not in our lifetime. But in our lifetime, we're all going to definitely be affected to the point that we're probably all going to die, and we definitely are going to live a diminished quality of life because of this thing. It's already hit me. As I told you before, I was affected by it directly. By the iodine that went into my thyroid, and now I have to take supplements for the rest of my life, or I will die. I'm told not just get sick, I will die. There's no way of saving you without my supplement. And the same thing may be wrong with you. If you're feeling ill, you need to go to your doctor and have your T3, T4, TSH tested. But here's my plan, folks, and I've been thinking about this for a long time. Right along here is the shoreline of where Tepco is. Now, in part 1 of our series, I explained to you that the power plant was built along the ocean. And you'll notice that most power plants are built somewhere along a body of water. And they use the body of water to keep the plant cool, because they exchange the cool water in the body of water, in this case the Pacific Ocean. They use this water to cool off and to recondense the steam that goes through the turbine, and then they heat it back up again and boil it. So that's why they build these things next to water. The downside to it is, if anything bad happens, the radionuclides can leak into the body of water, and wherever that water goes, in the case of the Pacific Ocean, it goes literally everywhere. From the Pacific Ocean, you can sail a sailboat anywhere in the world. So that water will eventually circulate anywhere in the world, but the first place it goes is to the United States. There's a current that runs directly from the west to the east, and it comes straight to Canada and the United States. And so that's why you're seeing the fish die-offs in the walrus. The mammals are dying because there's not enough fish to eat, and the fish are dying because the water is radioactive and they don't have enough fish to eat because the big fish eat the small fish, and it's the small fish that get affected first. And because it bioaccumulates, it's going to kill the younger fish first, and then it's going to accumulate in the larger fish. But a one-cell organism that only lives 6 months is going to be immediately affected by this, because as soon as it goes to reproduce, it's not going to be able to reproduce properly, and it's going to die. And so now your baleen whales, the whales that are filter and plankton eaters, aren't going to have anything to eat, and your clams and your mussels and your starfish and all these fish that breathe in and out water constantly. As they breathe in and out, they're going to be breathing in the radionuclides that are leaking off of this beach by virtue of the fact that the molten fuel cores have sunken down into the ground. They don't know exactly where they are. They know they're down, and they're down pretty deep, like 20, 30, 40, maybe even 90 meters down into the ground. But they're in the water table, and that's keeping them cool, but it's also steaming, and the steam is coming up, and that's going up into the air and then blowing, believe it or not, the prevailing wind, the jet stream blows from Japan straight to the United States. So you're getting it two ways. You're getting it by the water coming slowly to the east, and you're getting it by the jet stream blowing it more rapidly towards the United States. Now look, I have a plan where we're going to build a wall. We're not going to try to directly attack this thing because it's so toxic you can't get near it. And moreover, the Japanese are working on decommissioning these plants. So I'm not trying to interfere with them decommissioning these plants. What I do want to do is I want to let the Japanese continue to try to get the fissionable products and the toxins out of the ground, while simultaneously walling off the Pacific here so that whatever bad does leach into the ground, whether it comes out here or all the way out here, it's going to just end up in a gigantic swimming pool. Now I'm talking about from here to here maybe being a mile or a mile and a half. And we're going to have a radius from the Tepco plant to the wall of maybe 1 to 1.5 miles, or even more. We have to do a proper analysis, but this is an offhand idea that I came up with, and we're going to just wall this thing off, and we're going to use rocks like a jetty, and we're going to use and concrete, and we're going to pour it down to bedrock. We're going to dig it down to where we hit bedrock, and then we're going to just pile as much concrete and whatever we can use as a barrier, chunks of plastic, mixed in with boulders. I know the plastic's going to eat away after a while, but we're going to just pump concrete, plastic, anything that we can to slow this sucker down, and we're going to build a wall all around this thing so that we're going to block not all of the radionuclides, because this is not a waterproof wall, but we're going to keep it to the point where it's going to end up being radioactive in here, but far less dangerous out here. And then where the United States is, all the way down here, is going to be barely noticeable. And so, and the fish that live in the middle are going to be somewhat protected. Now, anything living in here is going to die instantly, but we have to choose some point where we draw the line, and this is going to be just like a no-go zone, and no different than Chernobyl, only our no-go zone is going to be a water no-go zone. Nothing can live in this water, just like nothing can live near Chernobyl in Russia. So right now, not having a wall or anything, not even trying to block what's coming into the Pacific Ocean, is dereliction of duty as far as I'm concerned, and not even trying. I mean, how much could it possibly cost in the whole scheme of the quantitative easing that we've been pumping out? For $1 billion, you could build this wall, and you could plug essentially this thing up, and you could tell the Japanese, look, go ahead and keep doing your work here, but we're going to work out in the ocean, and we're going to do this, and we're going to bring in the British, we're going to bring in the Saudis, we're going to bring in the South Americans, whoever wants to work, and we're going to pay them very well, and it's high risk work because you are going to get contaminated. And my theory is that we're only going to work when the wind is blowing this way. So you're going to catch days when you have wind patterns where the wind is blowing in the right way, so that you're not going to be directly hit by the steam coming off of these generators that are out of control. And so every day that the wind is not blowing your way, you're going to be digging your trench and throwing your boulders and your concrete down in here. We're going to build this wall up maybe 50 feet high out of the water. Once this is built, what we'll do is we'll take 1 inch thick flexible styrofoam, and we're going to float it inside here, because it'll be calm in here, because the ocean waves aren't going to make it over those boulders, because it'll be like a jetty. And this will be a calm zone. It'll be radioactive, but it'll be calm. And then we're going to float styrofoam over this area, and then we're going to coat it with plastic. Whether we use just say roofing tarps or whatever, but we're going to cover this with enough plastic so that anything that's steaming up from underneath that hits it will condense and drop back down into the water. We're not trying to prevent all excretions. What we're trying to do is we're trying to slow this damn thing down so that way less radioactivity is going to reach the Pacific Ocean, and then from there we have the theory of dilution to mitigate the rest of it. But we have got to knock this thing down. If we can knock it down 90% right there a mile offshore and stop it there, 90% of it, and let the ocean absorb the other 10% of it, I think we can save the lion's share of the marine life that ordinarily would die if you did nothing. Doing nothing is the worst thing of all, and that's what we're doing. It's kind of like you're on the Titanic and the band is playing and you're drinking your last drink instead of fixing the ship. If I were the captain of the Titanic, the damn ship wouldn't have sank. First of all, I wouldn't have hit the iceberg. As a captain of a ship, I would have known better than to drive that fast and faster than I could see. But even if I had hit the iceberg, I can think of 10 ways of keeping that ship floating, and they never tried any one of the 10 ways to keep the ship floating. So I'm telling you that I come from a family of geniuses and inventors, and I'm telling you that my idea here can work. Walling this thing off and, in a sense, sarcophagizing it from a distance is really the best way to, and the safest way to do it. And the other reason I say do it from a distance is because you're going to need the pool of water that's in the middle to keep those red hot coriums. They're called coriums because they're molten uraniums and uranium daughters that are glowing as hot as the sun. And frankly, the deeper they go into the earth, probably the safer we are. So I say just go ahead and let them sink. Pulling them out of the ground, then just going to create more problems. I say they came from the earth, let them go back into the earth, and let them just sink there. But my whole philosophy here is don't let this shit be mobile. We cannot allow these atoms to be mobilized by the fact that they're in the water and they're mobile and they're allowed to go all over the earth. That's what's going to kill us. We have to contain it. And whether or not that container is made out of steel or boulders or sand or people's old wall-to-wall carpeting that they threw out of their house, and they throw wall-to-wall carpeting in between the boulders, whatever you can throw out there to slow down the flow of water from the Tepco plant to the outer world. Now, like I said, the fact that your thing is a mile big on the inside is going to probably heat up. That's why the Pacific Ocean's heating up, because Tepco is actually, those out-of-control nuclear reactors are actually heating up the ocean. Pacific Ocean have been registering 6 degrees for this time of the year above normal, and the asses that are saying, oh, well, the fish are dying because the water is warmer than normal and it's just a weather event, these people are out of their minds. The ocean has measurably got these toxins in it. And why do you think birds are dropping out of the sky? What do you think happened to my thyroid? Why do you think that so many children are being born now with problems? It's because of these radionuclides, and they're measurable with instruments. Now, if you're a scientist, you know that you don't ignore your instruments. It's like a pilot. When you're flying your airplane and it's dark at night, and you look at your altimeter and it says you're 3,000 feet above the ground, and you look out the window and you say you can't see anything, that doesn't mean the ground isn't 3,000 feet down. If your altimeter says you're at 3,000 feet and you've dialed in the correct barometric pressure, you're 3,000 feet above the ground level. That doesn't mean you're above ground level, but you're at 3,000 feet altitude. But the ground could be higher if there's a mountain under you, remember, if you're probably properly trained pilot. I'm just saying, if you're measuring higher levels of cesium and other radioactive elements in the water, you can be sure that it's coming from Fukushima. Don't give me a bunch of bull crap and try to blame it on something else, or blame it on the weather, or blame it on Volkswagens that don't have Volkswagen engines that are running without a catalytic converter. It's all bullshit, folks. That's not creating the cesium in the water, and it's not making the walruses die, and they're half the weight that they should be, because they can't find fish to eat. The reason they can't find fish to eat are because the fish are dead. The young fish that they eat are smaller than them, and they're young, and they only live a couple of years, so they're already to the point where they're having offspring, and their offspring aren't being born properly, because this thing happened in March 2011. So here we are, smart enough to know what is doing this, but we're not doing anything to mitigate it. I mean, that's a criminal act, for God's sake. I mean, the United States of America, during World War II, the United States of America built docks off the coast of France that were to receive the ships. I mean, they actually built pilings, and they built these big, I forget what they call them, billets or whatever, that they were going to use as they unloaded the ships. So, I mean, that was a big undertaking, and they did it under wartime, and the Nazis were probably wondering what they were doing. Here we've got nobody stopping us. All we have to do is have the will to do it and the money to do it. And I would strongly advise, moreover, I would issue bonds, and I would demand that the Fed lend money for this thing, and the whole earth can put money into this thing. And I think that the Fed should not just lend the money, but it should be a grant that should to save the earth, because these radionuclides are a matter of life or death. Now, President Obama had the nerve to get up and say there's no risk, there's no immediate danger. Well, I mean, listen to what he's saying. There's no immediate danger. Right, you're not going to drop dead from it immediately. You're not going to die until next week. That's what he's saying. You're not going to die till next year. Now look, I don't know about you, but being a small businessman all my life, I think ahead. I went to school to become a real estate broker. I served a 2-year apprenticeship in New Jersey, which is what I had to serve. Then I had to do the same thing again, serve an apprenticeship in Florida. And I didn't do that because I wanted to. I did that because I knew after I was done, I was going to be able to get that job or open that business. You know, when you're a businessman, like I was all my life, and my wife too, you do things now in order to get a gain later, to make a return later. And this isn't just a return, this is a matter of whether you're going to live or die later. Now, if someone told you if you don't put an addition onto your house, or if you don't plant a different kind of grass on your front lawn, in 5 years, we have scientific proof that you may not surely, but you probably will die. You would run out right away to Home Depot and you'd buy the new grass and you'd have it planted. You might pay an expert to plant the grass to make sure it grew right. If someone said to you, you have to have the right kind of house, otherwise you're surely going to die. If you build a wood house versus a stone house, you think of the story of the 3 wolves and the 3 little piggies, and one builds a wood house, and one builds a house made out of sticks, and one builds a house out of brick, because they knew the wolf was coming. And the guy that had the masonry home, the little piggy, the wolf couldn't do anything to him because he built his house properly. Well, this this problematic nuclear power plant has gone run into some serious problems, and if we don't take action now, we're all going to die. And it doesn't matter where you live, this thing is going to kill people in the northern hemisphere first, and then it's going to move into the southern hemisphere, and these radionuclides last for so long that talking about time is completely irrelevant. It's just a matter of once the poisons are released, it's just a matter of time when that poison atom is going to hit your body or hit food that you eat, and then it gets into your body. Talking about, oh, it's going to wear out after so many years is ridiculous. This is something that will definitely get you. It's a matter of when. And to the people in the United States, it's already here. It's already got me, my thyroid. I don't eat fish. I won't eat a tuna fish because I know tuna fish eat smaller fish, and I know they've all been irradiated, and so they're carrying radioactive atoms. The tuna fish eats the radioactive atoms, and that cesium gets stuck in the muscle and the meat of the tuna fish, and then you eat the cesium, and the cesium goes right to your muscle, and what's the main muscle in your body is your heart. Then your heart's going to generate an arrhythmia, and the doctor's going to say, oh, well, you've got a heart problem, you've got an arrhythmia, you need a pacemaker. But, you know, you never asked the doctor why you needed a pacemaker, did you? He just said, well, I need a pacemaker. Well, did you ever wonder why you needed a pacemaker? Well, it's because cesium got into your heart and screwed up the pathway of electricity going between the brain and your autonomic function, and your heart's not beating right. Or part of your heart's dead because it was killed by the cesium cells that are jammed in your heart muscle. Now, your body will naturally excrete some of these by, it's called biorhythms or whatever, but the body, just as a matter of the changeover of cells, as the old cells die, the new cells come, gets rid of it. So over years and years and years, you know, but it's theoretically possible that these atoms are going to be stuck in your body for 30 or 40 years before your body chooses that particular cell to excrete, and then the next cell coming in might also have a cesium atom to it, or it might have a uranium atom in it, which is going to last even longer. The point is, folks, the ocean also makes the oxygen that we breathe. Now, Al Gore is going to be jumping up and down and saying, see, I've got my meter here, and oh, he'll look at his meter, and his meter says the oxygen levels are going down and the carbon dioxide levels are going up. Well, the people are still breathing carbon, they're breathing in oxygen and they're exhaling carbon dioxide, but the ocean's not making any more oxygen. The biologics that are living in the ocean that produce the oxygen are dead. If you ask any biologist who has a brain and isn't lying to you or working for the government in it and told to lie to you so he won't scare you, will say, oh no, that's not true, and the amount of radiation coming out of Fukushima is not enough to worry about. Well, look, if you're not so worried about it, why don't you go over to Fukushima and help the Japanese people fix it? Why don't you go over there and put one of those radioactive suits on and get down there and grab a piece of the corium, and we'll give you a shovel, and then you dig it out and fix it. No, you're smart enough to stay away from the place. And you're smart enough not to eat the tuna fish either. But you'll tell everybody else to eat it. Meanwhile, in the United States, President Obama jacked up the EPA, and they're not even checking the food to see if it's got radiation in it. We know that enormous amounts of radionuclides are leaking into the Pacific Ocean. We know that for a fact because it's measurable. It's like the aircraft altimeter. If it says you're flying at 5,000 feet, you're flying at 5,000 feet. I don't care whether you can see out the window or not. You have to trust your gauges. When you're flying on instruments, you don't look out the window. You can't see anything. You're flying in darkness and you're flying in the clouds. You're flying on instruments. You trust your instruments. If every Geiger counter in the world is saying you've got contamination in the Pacific Ocean, oh, and by the way, every nuclear physicist worth his salt knows that this crap will kill you. Not might kill you. It will kill you if it gets in your body, and you're not on, you know, you're not going to contribute to building this wall. Or you don't think it's a good idea to build a wall to block it? That's funny because the Israelis built a wall to keep the Palestinians out. I would think that even Israel would donate money to keep this shit out. Look, we have got to block, if the wall only keeps half of the radionuclides out, it's a major accomplishment. Build another wall behind it to keep the other half out, or to cut it half and half again. Having a no-go zone in the Pacific Ocean is no big deal. And the water that's in the no-go zone will help to cool the corium that's already there. So this is a very, very good idea. And by digging down to bedrock before you start pouring in your, pumping in your concrete and supplemented by giant boulders and debris, which we can take off of mountains from Japan, or we can ship in from wherever we have to, and we'll just dump it. Dump, you know, shipload after shipload until that wall is built. And I think we could, if we rally hard, we can build this wall in 2 years or less. They should have started building the wall right away. It had been done by now. And then the amount of radionuclides that hit the United States would be way less, and what circulates around the world would be way less. Now we're facing not being able to eat the seafood. Oh, wait a minute, if you live in the U.S., they don't test the seafood. You just go ahead and be dumb enough to eat it. I'll go tuna fishing. I'm a really good tuna fisher. I told you before, I'm a good fisherman. I'll catch President Obama a tuna fish out in the Pacific Ocean, and I'll bring it to Washington, and I'll see if he eats it. Then we'll see how long he lives. Matter of fact, I'll catch him one every week. I bet he keels over within a couple of months. He keels over with heart problems. But for the people, they don't even test this shit because they don't want to scare the people. If you don't build this wall, we're all going to die. Okay? And believe me, I don't like giving you bad news. But building this wall is easy. I know, because being a Coast Guard captain and a pilot of a boat and being out in the ocean so much, I know that building that is it's just a gigantic seawall is all it is. That is not, it's a no-brainer, folks. And if you build it far enough away from the site, the workers aren't going to be radiated to the point where it's going to be, let's use Obama's words, immediately harmful. And if you stop working on days that the wind is blowing from Tepco toward you, you work on the other side of the wall. Eventually, once you build that thing all the way up, the water inside there, the radiation level is going to go really, really high. But it's just going to be a dead zone, a no-go zone, and that will act as the buffer. That wall will be the buffer between us and the life that lives on the other side of the wall. And I'm not saying it's going to be real pleasant living right on the other side of that wall, but I'm saying miles away from that outer wall, the dilution factor will be really high. And that you can always talk about building a second wall. If the first wall only, if it cuts it just in half even, it's still, you've done God's work by building that wall. Eventually we have to talk about phasing these things out because they're nothing but trouble. A very small percentage of the world's electricity comes from nuclear. We have the ability right now, and I'm going to prove it to you. I told you I'm going to have a press release soon, where we're going to prove that you can live on solar and wind power. Every single home in the United States can live on solar and wind power. You don't need to build these compact cities where you have to have a nuclear power station over here. You can let people move farther apart, and each one of them can collect their own sunlight, and they can have their own small wind power generators. You could even transmit electricity around the earth, where the sun's on one side of the earth, but it's not on the other side of the earth. You know, when you get on Skype and you talk to somebody in China, and you're looking at your Skype, and you look out the window and it's dark, and you're looking at the window on their Skype and the sun's up. Maybe we should figure out a way of transferring the power that's collected from the sun from one side of the earth to the other. Why can't it be done? You could step the voltage up to 1,000,000 volts and transmit it a long way. And even if only half the power makes it, so what? You're getting the power for free. Once you pay for the solar panels, which by the way aren't that expensive compared to what they generate, and compared to the cost of the problem that this thing's making, huh? Solar power is cheap compared to the problems that this thing is generating. And what about the loss of life? How much is the loss of life worth? Now, I'm all for, maybe the New World Order did this on purpose. I mean, they have weapons that can generate big tsunamis. It's possible that this was a man-made event, believe it or not. And I know you don't want to believe me because you're like, Ben, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, crazier things have happened. I want to open up an investigation into 9/11 as an insurance scam. Let's just take the politics out of it and let's just say, you know what? Let's open this thing up as an insurance investigation. 3,000 people died. We need to look into this thing. A lot of money was paid from the insurance company. Under the insurance company claim laws, we're allowed to put people under oath, under an examination under oath, which means we can ask them any questions that we want. And I have a lot of questions. And I'm sure that the alternative media has an awful lot of questions that they'd like to ask. There isn't any reason that we shouldn't go back and look into this. Give me a couple of reasons that make any kind of sense why you wouldn't want to look into 9/11 and what happened that day, and why you wouldn't want to investigate the owner of that building and the big collection he made. I mean, he bought a policy 2 months before the building was taken down. Then there were 2 planes instead of 1, so he tried to put a double claim in, and I think he had double indemnity if it was a terrorist attack, so that's suspicious. The vacancy factor of the building was higher than it had ever been. He had asbestos problems. I can tell you, as being an experienced insurance adjuster, I'd be very suspicious of this claim. Then once you start looking into the claim, then you can start wondering about, okay, now that we see that, maybe there is some politics behind this. Then the United States uses this as a reason to invade a country that had nothing to do with it. I mean, they openly admit now that Saddam Hussein, who they hung, by the way, had nothing to do with 9/11. But they hung him. Think about that for a minute. How would you like it if the Canadian government came down here and grabbed Obama and hung him? Well, no, let's not ask that question. How would you like it if the people of Iraq, who we hung their president, how would you like it if they came over here and had their way with President Obama and put him in jail and asked him a lot of questions and then ended up with a hanging? Better not ask that question either. When you have a lot of questions that you can't ask, then you're being muzzled. And when you're being muzzled, then your right to speak out is being, your constitutional right to freedom of speech is being compromised. And I'm sorry, but the owner of that building walked away with billions of dollars. And I have to wonder, would he rather have the building or the billions of dollars? As an insurance adjuster and as a commercial real estate broker, I would say if I owned a building that had asbestos problems and it was in downtown New York where the fines are horrendous, the daily fine for having asbestos in that building was probably outrageous, and my vacancy factor was high, which means the occupancy was low, it would behoove me to have, they call it Jewish lightning, a fire. Isn't that funny they call it Jewish lightning? That's silly. But that's what they call it, Jewish lightning. And then the Pentagon, I mean, nobody has a photograph of the airplane that supposedly hit the thing. It's the most heavily guarded building in the face of the planet, and nobody has a video of the aircraft that hit the building. And in the office of the building that was demolished was $1.5 million. And I guess they had it in cash because if it was a American Express traveler's check, they could have canceled it. and they would have issued a new check. But I think it was cash. But you see, if you have a lot of cash, you're considered a terrorist. If you buy a cup of coffee with cash, you're a terrorist. Well, what if you have $1.5 million in cash? Are you a terrorist? How about if you have $1.5 million worth of cash and it vanishes into thin air? Nobody knows where it is. They can't account for it because it mysteriously, out of that whole big building that's going around in circles, I don't know how big that place is, half a mile in diameter maybe. It hit the office that had the money in it, and $1.5 trillion. $1.5 trillion. No one can recover the $1.5 trillion because it wasn't just numbers in a computer that could be replaced. Say, oh well, it was in the bank, but the computer that knew what the account number was got destroyed. So they said they lost $1.5 trillion. I mean, you know, if you add it all up, folks, it's a freaking joke. And then the United States invades Iraq, and what was Iraq doing at the time? Let me think here. Oh, that's right. Saddam Hussein decided to sell oil in euros right before this happened. And right before that happened, what were we doing to Iraq? The oil for food program. Remember that? Do you remember how many kids died because I guess we weren't upholding our part of the bargain? We were taking the oil, but I guess we never gave them the food. There was mass starvation over there. But it seemed to me our economy was booming. The traffic on the highway, even around here, was ridiculous. The traffic on our highway here is 1/3 now that it used to be because of the recession that we're in, versus the bubble that we were in. So we were getting our oil, but they were starving over there under the oil for no food program. So that's probably, I mean, if I were, I'm trying to put myself as an investigative insurance adjuster. I investigated many claims. So let's just call this a claim. If I were investigating the claim, I would put myself in the shoes of Saddam Hussein. Now, why would he not want dollars for his oil? He has an oil for food program, so he gets food, but maybe he needs something other than food. And the only thing that his company outputs is oil. So now all he has is food. And the food isn't being delivered. That's why everybody's starving to death. So he makes a business decision to sell in euros because the Europeans could use the oil. He's got excess oil. He could give us all the oil we need, and we won't miss a beat. And then he can sell some oil to Europe. The way I'm trying to follow his train of thought. His train of thought at the time probably was, I've got to take care of the needs of my people, and they need medicine, not just food. And the food they're not getting because they're starving. And we are providing the oil to America, but they're not honoring their commitment. Gee, when was the last time that happened? So they decide to make a deal with the euros, to get euros, because with the euros he could buy food and things for his people. So that made the United States really angry because now they're denoting oil in euros versus dollars, and the petrodollar is at risk. Because remember, you know, it's not on the gold standard anymore. The dollar is backed only by the fact that it's backed by oil. And it's not really backed by oil, it's backed by the fact that we have a gun pointing at the people who own the oil, and if they don't sell it to us, then we might invade them, so they sell the oil. So it's backed by the threat of the gun that's pointing at the people that really own the oil. So Saddam Hussein said, well, I'll sell the oil to them, but I'll make sure I keep selling the oil to the Americans too. But the Americans were like, no, we can't have this, because if he starts liking this euro too much more, or it diminishes the value of the dollar, that's going to be maybe good for them but bad for us. And since our dollar really isn't backed by anything else, come on, the dollar's got a lot of strength. I call it the Star Trek economy. The truth is, if you made an announcement today and said the dollar isn't backed by anything, Americans would still accept it. Other countries would still accept it as long as you had to work for it. If you have to work hard to get a dollar, you're going to watch where you spend it, and the dollar is going to be worth a dollar. So it's only made out of paper anyway, so it's always been just made out of paper, and it's only been backed by a promise. But before they changed from the gold standard to the oil standard, I mean, do you really think if you had $1 million and you brought it down to the Fed that they'd give you $1 million worth of gold? They'd probably try to talk you out of it. Maybe they would give it to you, otherwise they'd think you'd grandstand and go on TV or something. Back in those days, the TV might listen to you. Nowadays, they wouldn't even listen to you. But the point is, the world collectively could get together, and with me as a leader, I think we could come to a decision that the money doesn't really have to be backed by anything as long as it's backed by prudence, and it's backed by someone who isn't going to go insane and just print money for the purpose of getting rich and playing Monopoly, and just instead of playing a fair game of Monopoly with the dice, they just start scraping all the money, and the money's not backed by anything. But if money has to be worked for, whether it be a yuan or a nimby or a brick or a ruble or a euro, if you have to work hard for a buck or a whatever, then it has value by virtue of the fact that work had to be output to get that. So this whole theory of, well, we're going to back it by gold. The reason that the BRIC countries want to back it by gold is because they're upset with the fact that the United States was able to run up a huge debt, export its inflation, and then say, well, now we're going to have the opposite over here. We're going to back it by gold. That's the opposite. That, if you had something like that going and it truly was backed by gold, and there's a finite amount of gold in the world, then there would be a finite amount of money in the world, then there couldn't be any growth, because if there's no more gold. But then on the other side of the coin is, what if somebody finds a big gold mine and digs all the gold out of the ground? I think it's more important that people have to work for a buck or a renminbi or a brick, and backing it by a this or backing it by a that isn't so important as the moral character of the people who are printing the money and what they do with the money and whether the money is acceptable. And the money is going to be acceptable to the people as long as they can't easily get it without working for it. That's what this is all really about. And these oligarchs don't want to work for the money. They want everybody else to work, but they don't want to work. They want to get richer and richer and richer. And so they say the money's not backed by gold anymore, so now we can print more. Oh, it's backed by oil, so they divert your attention. And now it's not backed by anything because they're selling oil in places now, and they're selling it not backed by the dollar. But you don't suddenly see that the dollar is not worth anything. It's when the people that are running things don't have consensus, and there isn't a moral order that money can be printed in order to take care of those who are downtrodden and poor, and those who are trying to develop products that people need and need investment capital to do it. So they have this brick investment bank, but that's going to be limited also by how much, if it's backed by gold, it's going to be limited by how much gold they have. So that's going to run into a brick wall too at some point. Get it? Brick wall. The brick wall, the gold. You didn't get it, did you? Okay. Look, folks, right now the most important thing is your life, and your life is hanging on these radionuclides that are loose and are measurable at your home. You can take a Geiger counter at your home and you can measure an increased elevated risk of chemicals that are very, very dangerous, that were one atom, if it's ingested into your body, it'd be like getting an X-ray, X-ray after X-ray after X-ray for the rest of your life, and you will eventually be damaged, killed, or get cancer from it. So we already know that that's true. That issue should go right to the top of the list. Now, as far as the economy goes, while we are first building this wall, the rest of us who don't build the wall need to get our businesses back on track. And as I said before, we need to track down those people who are damaged by the Great Depression. The economy was moving along just fine before the Great Depression. The mistake that was made in the Great Bubble was allowing the price of housing to go up and up and up and up, while not allowing the income to go up, and while the cost to produce goods that people need actually was going down. Because if it becomes easier and easier and easier to make something that someone needs because you have more powerful tools or better ways of manufacturing things and higher power tools, and at the same time you're charging this guy a lot of money for a house, but he can't get a job because the owner of the factory that this guy used to work at has a machine that does the work of 25 men, so now they only have one man working there because he does the work of 25 men, so they lay 25 guys off, and you're one of the 25 guys that gets laid off. Now you can't pay your mortgage. See, so the economy has got to be restructured so that there's an understanding that the quality of people's lives is not going to go down, it's going to go up. It's going to go up by virtue of the fact that you don't need to have that 40-hour-a-week job anymore, because the articles and items that you need to live are made very quick. You don't need to spend hours and hours to dig a hole to plant a big tree. They have a machine now that can just dig a hole in an instant and plant a tree, where it might have taken 6 guys digging all day to plant a tree. An AK-47, when World War II broke out, production was very important, and the president of Russia got together with the guy who invented the Kalashnikov, Mr. Kalashnikov, and they got together and they said, well, they did some calculations, and they said we need a certain number of guns to fend off the Nazis because they're already overrunning our country, and they got us all the way pushed back to the eastern side of our country. And so they said, we're not going to accept a new weapon, which they knew they needed a new rifle that could shoot a lot of bullets very fast because they had a lot of enemy Nazis coming. So they invented the AK-47. And they said, well, we want to know that we can shoot a lot of bullets very fast, but we want to be able to produce a lot of weapons fast. So they said they wouldn't mass produce or allow the AK-47 to go into production unless they can make the weapon in 1 minute or less. So believe it or not, they can make an AK-47 in 60 seconds, and that was the rule. They wouldn't approve it unless they could make it in 60 seconds. Imagine. So they could make enough weapons to drive out any enemy very, very quickly. And so it's the same thing with a modern-day factory. A modern-day factory isn't going to open today. If they know they need a lot of workers that are going to be falling on the job once in a while by virtue of having an accident, and then they're going to hire a lawyer and sue them, or they're going to get tired, or they're going to get sick and not show up for work, and they're going to have benefits where they have to get paid even though they're not producing that day. But the owner of the factory can buy a machine. He's going to buy a machine. You see most automobiles today are made by robot machines. You see very few workers actually working in a General Motors plant or a Toyota plant or a Honda plant. I mean, these robots are throwing these body panels around, and you have a few humans that are monitoring them and making sure that they don't go crazy, or shutting them off if they do something wrong until they can be fixed, or adjusting them or fixing them, or deciding when they made enough of them that they can stop. So the number of workers is actually going down. Now I'm saying this can be viewed as bad by some people, but by some people it can be viewed as good, because now you can buy a Honda car or a General Motors car that was made in 20 hours instead of 2,000 hours. So that automobile can cost less. Did you follow me? And anything that you need can be done less. The farmers are growing more wheat because they have a tractor, and a tractor can plow up a lot of ground, and it can plant a lot of wheat in a very short period of time. So huge amounts of land can be tilled for agriculture purposes, so many people can be fed. So I'm saying, instead of running the price of a house up higher and higher and higher and expecting the average human being to be able to afford a price of a house that's going up and up and up, well, productivity is going down and down and down. And in fact, even the house itself is built in a week instead of 5 months, because they've got machines that can screw screws together with electricity and battery packs, and they have giant cement trucks now that can pour enough concrete for 3 or 4 houses at a time. I mean, everything is done faster and easier, so people shouldn't have to work 40-hour a week. But that doesn't mean you need to live a lower quality of life either. What it means is you should be able to live a higher quality of life, because now you have more time to enjoy your life. Doesn't mean your quality of life should go down. But when the bubble hit, the price of a house went up and up and up by virtue of the fact that the appraisers and the banks were saying, oh, the house is bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, the house grew bigger and bigger and bigger because they were able to build it faster and faster and faster. And so they built it bigger, figuring they could sell it for more money, but there was nobody out there with a job that could buy the house. Then all of a sudden, the guy who owned a business, his business started to drop off because imports are coming in, and the Chinese have newer machinery. I have a very good friend who is in the printing business, and he said if you go to China and you look at a modern printing factory there, their machines are new, and compared to the machinery that we're using here, it's like night and day. They can print at a higher resolution than we can. They can print things that we can't print. They have better equipment to make coatings on paper. They can print circuit boards better than us. That's why they can make solar panels cheaper than us, because they have big machines. Solar panels, just a printed giant circuit board. And so they have the modern machines that can print these things. And to say, oh no, we don't want to accept these into our country, we want to put a tax on them, is insane, because of all things, you know, giving you a solar panel that's going to generate electricity and lower your cost of electricity is it's like a gift. If the Chinese want to give you a solar panel that for some reason or another we just don't have the money to buy the machine, or our banks don't want to invest in a factory to make the machine, or the New World Order doesn't want us to switch to machines because they seem to like these nuclear power plants because I think they kill people, and I think they like it killing people. Because there's really no excuse for this. Like I said, I'm going to prove to you that you can live on solar panel and wind power. There's no need to have radionuclides that are going to do nothing but kill people. And folks, you know, even when these nuclear power plants are running right, they're still releasing minute amounts of radionuclides that are very, very deadly. Admittedly, they come out in small amounts, so the nuclear power plant will say, well, you know, we had a little release today, but averaged over a year, that's, you know, not enough to do anything to you. Well, if you were there when they made the small release, you would have got enough to get, you know, to damage your thyroid. So, and because these radionuclides last essentially forever, any release is unacceptable. And if you can have a workaround to that, and remember, we're burning light bulbs now that are burning 80% of the 80% less, only 20% of the power that the old light bulbs used to use, and our new big flat screen TVs are using 20% of the power that the old TVs used to use. I mean, all of our we're becoming more efficient in every single way. So my advice is that we need to take advantage of the fact that and embrace having maybe a slightly lower work week that's going down, but and accept the fact that your income is going down, but not raise the price of the good just because if a light bulb is going to get better electricity mileage, it's going to burn less power. Don't charge $13 for the bulb when I know you're making the bulb for $1, and you're selling it based on the fact that, well, you know, it's going to save you $13 in electricity. We need to start thinking out of the box and thinking in terms of a standpoint of, You know, everybody has to be able to live and enjoy life, and we have to stop thinking about destroying each other and start thinking about, look, there with modern efficiencies we can work less hours and enjoy the rest of our time by being online and communicating, by thinking up new ideas that allow us to maybe think about space travel, new ideas that allow us to think about a light bulb that gets even better, more lumens per watt of electricity expended, a new way of generating electricity, maybe besides just solar and besides just wind. And I'm not talking about these necessarily having giant wind farms. I mean, there's no reason that houses can't have small wind turbines on their roof, 1 or 2 small wind turbines on the roof to aid when the wind is blowing and they're not working all the time. But everything added together, pulled together, is going to be enough to power a reduced expectation by the populace. And the upside to it is that you're going to have more time to spend doing what you want to do. Maybe you like to jog, maybe you like to go fishing. Well, I wouldn't advise fishing in the Pacific Ocean right now because you're going to have radioactive fish. But once we get these problems solved, we could have a cleaner, better Earth, and people can work less hours. We may reach a certain point where people only have to work 10 or 15 hours a week, and the rest of the time they work is on their own science, and by collaboration through friends, they may be able to come up with new inventions, ways for us to reach interstellar space, to go to Mars, to build homes that are smaller but actually more efficient. And houses don't need to be really big. I mean, you see TV shrinking. I mean, I have this gigantic screen television set that I have here right now. I could replace with one that uses 1/10 the power and is 5 times clearer, and saves energy too. And I just haven't gotten rid of it yet because I feel bad throwing it away. It does have good sound because it has big speakers, but I can assure you when it gets old, it's already old, but when it burns out, I'm not going to fix it. I'm going to replace it with a TV that uses way less electricity, and I expect my electric bill to go down. But houses don't need to be huge. I mean, and people don't need to work 40 hours a week. It's just not necessary anymore. We have achieved a point in our lives and of evolution where people could enjoy their lives instead of fighting each other and putting our efforts, our 40-hour work week, into building a better bomb or a better gun to kill your neighbor to take his raw materials is the wrong way of thinking. We should be thinking about ways of doing things that have never been done before in your spare time and not even getting paid for it, because you won't need the money for it, because your expenses are going to be so low because you're going to be living off the grid, or you're going to be living in small grid-tied communities that are all getting sources of energy that come for free from wind and solar and tidal or whatever. And the spare time you have can be used in enjoying your life instead of just getting old and working your fingers to a bone. So, okay, I would ask that you donate so that we can get all of our videos up online, and you can just PayPal it. Any amount, I appreciate anything anyone can do. You know, $5, $10, anything that you can support. And for $10, we'll plant a tree for you. We'll give you the GPS coordinates for it and a picture. So go ahead and donate. And like I said, I'd like to run for office. I'm probably going to do it as an independent. I feel very confident that I have ideas that far exceed anything that's ever been discussed before. First order of business is going to be shutting down these ridiculous wars and getting this Fukushima thing shut down. It's funny how you don't hear about that, but that's what's going to kill us all, not these wars. Although these wars are not going to be good and could end up in a nuclear war. We're going to die of nuclear radiation anyway. But this Fukushima, war or no war, this Fukushima will eventually kill all of us, whether we have a thermonuclear war or not, but we are headed that way. And I think it's far better to have friends, even though they think differently than us. That's an asset. It's not to our detriment. It's an asset. Okay, thank you, everybody. Call me. I'll call you back. I like to talk to people. That's why I'm here. Donate PayPal. and we'll get a nice website going. I've got some awesome videos I want to show you guys. And all of these broadcasts are going to be posted on said website as soon as it's done. Within hours of when that website is up, all of these videos that you've seen will be posted. Okay, great seeing you guys. See you later.